Welcome to Lord of the Vets, where I do the research so you don't have to. Why are you going to go and talk to Dr. Google when you can talk to a real one? Today we're going to talk about a very important issue, a decision every pet owner has to make. Are you going to de-sex your dog? It's such an important topic because it affects things like population control and also the health and overall well-being of your animal. So what are you going to do? Are you going to de-sex your dog or not? I'm here to help you make that decision. So what are the benefits of de-sexing? Well, one benefit is you're not going to get any unwanted puppies and litters, quite an obvious one. Another one is unwanted behaviors such as aggression and roaming and dominance behaviors can be reduced by de-sexing. What else? Well, there's a variety of diseases that can actually be reduced from de-sexing, such as cancer. If you get your dog de-sexed, if she's a female dog, she'll have a far less risk of mammary cancer. So the risk goes down to below 1% if she gets de-sexed before her first heat, as opposed to much higher percentage if she's not de-sexed. Mammary cancer is a very important cancer because it's common. It's one of the most common forms of cancer, so getting that reduced is important. Animals that are de-sexed actually have a longer lifespan on average than animals that are not de-sexed, and it kind of spans between 1 and 2 years depending on the breed. Other forms of cancer that can be reduced are things like testicular cancer in males, uterine cancer, cervical cancer, ovarian cancer, and surprisingly it actually does not reduce the risk of prostate cancer in males, but it does reduce the risk of them getting prostate disease such as prostatitis. By de-sexing an animal, you're also going to reduce the risk, if it's a female, of her getting pregnant and then having complications related to that pregnancy, because pregnancy in itself has risks. Also, for females, heats are messy and it might be something you want to avoid. Some other diseases you'll avoid by getting your dog de-sexed is pyometra in females and also mastitis in females as well. So there's a lot of benefits to getting your dog de-sexed. Wonderful dog beach we have here. It's so beautiful. But what are the cons of getting your dog de-sexed? So this is something that isn't often talked about, and there are some drawbacks, but you need to weigh them up against the benefits. So if you get your dog de-sexed, there can be an increased risk of obesity. Now, in saying that, that can be managed through adjusting the feed intake. Most commonly this occurs because people are feeding a de-sexed dog as much as they would be feeding an intact dog. So if a dog's de-sexed, its feed needs to be reduced slightly to compensate for that. And there's a dietary video I'm going to make which will explain exactly how to do that. Another con to de-sexing is that some studies have shown an increased risk of a disease called hypothyroidism, where the thyroid does not produce enough thyroxine hormone. So what else? Musculoskeletal disorders. If an animal's de-sexed before it reaches skeletal maturity, this is most important for large breed dogs, there can be an increased risk of things like hip dysplasia, elbow dysplasia, and cruciate disease. Now again, this is most important for large breed dogs. Another thing to consider is urinary incontinence. So this means leaking urine. This is really important for females. So if a female is allowed to have her first heat before she's de-sexed, the risk of urinary incontinence goes down by 50%. So we're talking from the range of sort of 10 to 20% going down to about 5 to 10% risk overall. This again is most important in large breed dogs as they're more susceptible than small breed dogs. So how are you going to make your decision? Well, I'm here to help you. If you've got a small breed dog and you're not a breeder, I would advise you just to get the dog de-sexed as early as possible. For a puppy, the surgery's easier, it'll probably be cheaper, it'll be simpler, there's no risk of your animal either having an unwanted pregnancy or creating an unwanted pregnancy for one of your neighbors or your local friend down at the park. And there's not as much benefit to waiting for small breed dogs, so I don't think personally it's worth waiting for a small breed dog. Now, if you have a large breed dog, you could consider for a female waiting until she has her first heat before getting her de-sexed to reduce the risk of urinary incontinence and also to allow her skeleton to develop a little bit more before you go for that surgery. Now, you need to be aware that if you choose to do this, you need to be really careful that your dog doesn't get pregnant. There'll be a lot of management involved in this from keeping her away from intact males. In saying that, if you do wait for that first heat before getting your dog spayed, her risk of mammary cancer will go up by 8%. So it's a slight increase there. but it's something to weigh up against the benefits of that skeletal development and also the urinary incontinence. If you have a large breed dog that's susceptible to skeletal issues such as hip dysplasia or elbow dysplasia, breeds like German Shepherds, for example, and there's many others, you could consider waiting until skeletal maturity to get your dog desexed. In saying that, you do need to be aware there's a lot of management that will go into this. You need to make sure if you have a male, for example, you have good fences and that he's not going to jump over the fences and go and mate with the dogs in the neighborhood. He'll be more susceptible to roaming behaviors, and there might be an increased challenge with training and some behavioral disorders there to consider. And with a female, if you're going to wait till skeletal maturity, there is a risk that if it's a large breed dog, skeletal maturity is 18 months. So you might be waiting 3 heats, and by this point her risk of mammary cancer goes up considerably. It's something you really need to weigh the pros against the cons. If it's a female dog, I personally, and it was a large breed, I'd personally just wait 1 heat, get her desexed. If it was a male dog, it would really depend on my ability to handle that dog where I'm living, how good my fences are, and how much effort I'm willing to put into managing that dog, keeping him on lead in public, and just being really aware that he doesn't create any unwanted pregnancies or get into any fights. So, to summarize, the list of pros is long. There are a lot of benefits, and I think one of the most important things is that you get to spend more time with your animal because they have a longer average lifespan with desexing. There are some cons to be aware of, many of which can be managed. There can be some benefits in certain situations to delaying desexing if you're able to manage that animal. If it's a small breed, I don't think there's a lot of benefits to waiting to get the animal desexed. I think you should just get it done as early as possible. And one thing to consider is the older and more mature the animal is, going from a puppy to an adult, there are more risks. If your animal is fully grown when it gets that surgery, especially for a female, it is a more challenging surgery. It's a bit longer and the risks still go up slightly. I hope you found this helpful. Thanks for watching.